Well, welcome everyone. I'm going to do a little overview on constellations representing and kind of logistics for the day. I'm going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves really quickly so we can get a little bit familiar with each other, and that way we're not spending the first couple of hours of Sunday kind of getting comfy. So first, let's just do like a quick little grounding. If you want to close your eyes, get comfortable in your seat. And take a deep breath. And invite yourself to become fully present. Making any adjustments you need to so that you're comfortable. Letting go of any effort that it took to get here. Anything from your day that's lingering or nagging. Just set that aside. Give yourself this space to just be with what's present. Taking another deep breath and letting it out with a sound. And just noticing how you're feeling. Noticing any sensations in your body, any thoughts that are popping up, any feelings, any awarenesses. And invite yourself to drop in just a little bit more into being here now. And what I'll do is I'll just go around and just take a couple of minutes and share with everyone why you're coming on Sunday, why you want to be a part of the work. And if you have experience with constellation work or work similar to this, go ahead and share kind of what your experience has been, how that's been impactful for you, and anything else that's relevant that you want to kind of invite in the moment. So I have a volunteer to go first.
I'll go first.
Okay, thanks, Megan.
I'm Megan, and I found Isaiah a couple of years ago. He was doing an intro to constellations, and I was instantly like very drawn to the work, very curious about this concept of the field and just how powerful the process can be. And we actually, Isaiah and I entered into a 6-month container where we did a lot of field work, among other things. I learned a lot about myself, and a lot of those tools I still use today. And so this is actually going to be the first experience for me where I'm going to be really doing a constellation now that I'm steeped in the work enough to really get it fully. And so I'm really excited to see what comes through with this new level of awareness that I have. And I love the work. It's healing for everyone. So I'm just excited to dive back in.
Thanks, Megan. I appreciate you sharing that. And if anyone, I mean, we'll have questions later, but if there's stuff that, you want to ask immediately, this is a fine time to be able to, pose something that you're curious about, or if someone else mentions something like the field or something that's kind of like, what are they talking about? We can talk about that stuff now too. Who's up?
I can go next. So what struck me by what Megan just said is that it affects everyone. So my first run-in with family constellations was kind of by accident. I used to kind of go to a spiritual church in Denver, and they had a practitioner come in and set the space and do a couple constellations. And mine wasn't done, but it impacted me very, very intensely. And I kind of forgot about it for a little bit. And then I ran into Isaiah and Charlie at Joyful Journeys Hot Springs when I was on an herbal spiritual retreat and leading some stuff. And it just kind of clicked and felt like the work was coming to me at a time when I needed it to. And I also, like I said, it impacted me really strongly. So, and then I forgot. And so for it to just kind of come back in just felt like a really great alignment and convergence. So I guess that's why I'm here. I just feel like I need to be, but I am just ready to let go of a lot of the baggage of ancestry, but also dig some roots and deepen into what the ancestry is also, I think.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It was a pretty magical moment in the hot tub at Joyful Journey. There was about 5 of us. It was Charlie and I, and I think it was 4 ladies that were on the retreat. And it was just one of those moments where, hot tub conversations and it kind of like clicks and you have all this synchronicity. And this was like 30 minutes of like intro to constellations in the tub. And between her and this other woman, it was like one question after another, and another. Part of me was like, why don't we just get out of the tub and go do a constellation right now? Because it's kind of the quality of the connection that we'd had. And so Andrea and I stayed in touch and we talked over the summer. Charlie and I were still living in Colorado last summer. And it was amazing because Andrea just started doing the work. Like I check in with her like once a month or so, like, how's it going? You ready to do a constellation? And she'd tell me what's going on. I'm like, okay, you're still reorganizing. You're clearly in the intent, but the container is not quite emptied out yet. And so when Charlie and I left and I posted on social media that we were, leaving in the fall and being gone for the winter, she was like, what about the work? What's happening? And so really this event has a lot to do with Andrea and her intention that got set probably when she went to the constellation workshop a couple of years ago, but certainly in that hot tub that day was the seeds of this workshop. And situation is kind of lined up to be able to come back to Colorado in this time. And I'm really appreciative of the conversation and the dialogue that we've had for months now that kind of culminated today into like what we're actually doing on Sunday. So it feels nice. And I'm really thankful that all these people are showing up to support you in this work that you're doing and creating an opportunity for them as well. Who else would like?
This is just really beautiful to see. That's all I want to add.
Awesome. Who's next?
I can go because I resonate with the ancestry piece of things. I'm Emma, and this will be my first dive into family constellations, although I feel like I've been orbiting it for a while. And I'll be with you. My friend Fiona is going to be one of the people who's, I don't know how you say, at the center of the constellation, I guess, on Sunday. And so a bunch of us got together and gifted this to her for her birthday. And I also, just resonate with like understanding that being present to somebody else's in part of somebody else's constellation can also be profoundly healing for the participants, which is something that I'm really curious about. I'm currently in divinity school, and a big part of that exploration for me is like exploring my own ancestry, particularly like the impacts of like their participation in enslavement and colonization, and like how that legacy can be transmuted through reparations and reparative action. But I've gotten like deeply curious about white people's shame and guilt around ancestry, and like how it is that we can connect more authentically with the complexity of our ancestors, the goodness and the ways in which they were caught up in evil and all of that. So I have an inkling that family constellations is very, very relevant to all of that work that I've been steeped in the last 8 months or so. So I'm grateful to be with all of you.
I'm excited for you. There's times, and I can use Logan as an example of when someone is like already doing the work on a certain level, and then they come into a group that's doing this type of work, and all of a sudden it's like this click happens where people who are drawn to this work tend to be highly empathic, pretty physically, emotionally sensitive people. So sometimes just sitting in the room, it's like you become aware of things that you kind of have no business knowing. And so there's a level of depth that gets accessed that maybe Logan will share a little bit about this, but kind of how it translates when you leave the room, you know, kind of like you stand in someone else's shoes, you have all this compassion for their situation, and then you sit back down in the chair and you let it all go. And then you get back up and you do it again and you sit back down in the chair. And at some point you sit back down in the chair and you go, well, what am I representing now? You know, like what is my inheritance? What am I carrying? What am I projecting? What am I doing when I'm not representing? Because it's so compelling when you play a role, especially one that is kind of parallel to your own story. Well, I won't say too much else about it. It's kind of fun when you experience it for yourself and you go, oh, okay. How does this work? Like why does this work? And we'll get into that a little bit after the intros. I'm glad you're here. And thank you for gifting Fiona. Super sweet of you and Raya to do that.
I think it's gonna be really sweet. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Logan, I've queued you up.
Yes, you have. I was gonna wait till the end, but yeah, there we go. Yeah, I met Isaiah at an intro night that him and Jack were doing, or was it just yours?
I met you at Star House at a full moon event.
Oh, yes. Okay. Man, it's been such a long journey since then. Yeah, so we met at Star House, but I didn't really, yeah, it didn't click until I got into the room and really started just dropping into the work, and it was just so natural for me to just feel the field of everybody and want to participate, because I could see how healing the opportunity could be for the person that we were constellating for, and possibly for myself, but I didn't even know. It just felt so natural to be able to drop like out of me and like bring in a different energy and interact in a way that I don't even know how to explain it. It's just kind of like a out of body experience, yet you're like live viewing it, um and just to see the reconciliations that can happen is just amazing. And I worked with Isaiah also for 6 months and did a lot of work, not necessarily with constellations, but uh, with deeper work. And we did do a constellation for my birthday, which was really revealing on a lot of different levels, and um, allowed me to see a lot into really what was going on with my dad and his side of the family, and not even that far back. Ended up being, we thought it was much farther back, but yeah. So that was really revealing and healing, and since then, since COVID happened, it just hasn't been happening, and I've been missing it so much, and just really yearning to get back into the work and supporting community and people around. So I'm glad to support your friend Emma, and happy to, yeah, reveal what wants to be revealed within the constellations. So really excited to be here.
Thanks for sharing that, Logan. There's a couple of things you touched on that I'll just expand for a moment. And one of them is a basis of the constellation work is acknowledging what is, which sounds super simplistic, but the basis of the work is just naming what's true. And sometimes we're aware of the impact of something, but we don't necessarily know the causation of it. And so with the constellation work, often we can represent, and when I say represent, I mean having people or inanimate objects standing in as representations of other people or processes. And sometimes it's so apparent when we put it outside of ourselves, we can see it from a detached point of view. We have that witness consciousness where we're not emotionally connected or charged by it anymore, and we're able to see the circumstance. And sometimes a statement as simple as, I wronged you, when the impact of it is very clear that there was wronging that took place, sometimes that statement is enough for all of a sudden, and you can feel it in the room, there's a relief, like, okay, it's been said. Someone has taken responsibility for an action that the impact is very clear. And so when you're standing in that representation and you're playing that part and you're looking at someone else and you say that I wronged you, and this is, probably a pretty extreme example, there's a kinesthetic response in the body where even though it's not yours, maybe you wronged someone else at some point. And in that moment, that person in front of you represents the person that you wronged, and you're getting an opportunity to take responsibility for an action that has nothing to do with the present moment or this person's constellation. And your ego is way in the back over here, kind of like, I'm just in service to someone else's system, but we don't heal in a vacuum. And so there is no reconciliation for one individual without reconciliation for the entire system. And that's where I started calling my work systemic reconciliation, because it's bigger than families, it's bigger than ancestry. It's about reconciling things as human beings. And when you start to see a lot of these constellations represented, the stories are very, very similar. We are all dealing with very parallel suffering, and we've all inherited things from the past and from our DNA and from our conditioning as Western folks that are very similar to other people. So while everyone is unique and everyone has their own expression of their inheritance, you start to recognize that there are patterns and there are similarities within everyone, because we're just humans, and this is where we are in our evolution, and these are the shortcomings that we don't have modeling, and we don't necessarily have support or resources to be able to overcome. And so we come together as allies to support one another, not just with Fiona's constellation or Rowan's constellation, but we come together with the intent to deeply be in service to one another as sensitive human beings, and reflect to each other deeply where we are each entangled, whether it's within ourselves, whether it's in our family. And every single person in the room will see something different in that constellation. And so it's like a shared dream space where everyone has their own projections and their own representations happening. And sometimes I do them blind, where I won't name what a representative is, so that we all get that experience of seeing our own stuff on display, or playing a role and not getting caught up in, well, I'm a father figure, I'm supposed to show up this way. Because, as we'll see, sometimes the representation shows up very differently than how we imagine it will. Rowan, would you like to go next? We cut you off a little bit earlier.
Yeah, thank you. I really feel the nourishing field that's already been created, so I'm very grateful for that. So I'll be one of the other focus clients, and I've done constellations twice before, but it was many years ago, so I don't quite remember, aside from a particular role that has been popping in for me lately. But yeah, this feels like a very pivotal experience for me, because I'm just in a deep reconciliation, is a good word, process with my own sense of self in relation to family and the role that I had played in my life. So just feels very rich and very deep. And I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about the experience, because I've just been getting a lot of signs and, sensing into like the power of this work. And there's a lot kind of happening in my family at the moment. And so it just feels very, very profound. So I'm so grateful.
You froze, and I think you cut out at the end there, but I think you're back now. I see you moving. Is it me or is she frozen again? Okay.
She's frozen, unfortunately.
Okay.
The magic
All right.
got too strong. Zoom is like very magic responsive.
Yeah, Rowan is, oh, there you are. Rowan is one of the new folks that has popped in from stuff that I've posted on social media. And it's been an absolute joy connecting via phone and just getting a sense of the work that we'll be doing for her and with her. And so I'm really glad that you're going to be here. And I had forgotten that you would experience the work before. So it'll be really nice for you to be able to draw from some previous experience as well.
Thank you.
Austin, you're unmuted. Are you up?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, thank you for letting me share this space. I'm new to the Constellation experience. I'm a little bit familiar with it, but when Andrea invited me to join, I was honored and I'm excited. And it's already palpable to just hear everyone's voice and see some faces. So
yeah.
I'm excited to be able to participate in this and just hold some space.
Well, thank you for coming to support Andrea, and I look forward to seeing the roles that you end up playing on Sunday.
Thank you.
It's always really fun when someone steps in, and I'll cover representing a little bit, and then I'll toss it over to Charlie. Representing can be a little bit intimidating because we don't really have, it's different than play acting or role play. Like it's not standing in and saying, okay, cool, I'm gonna charades something out with the group. It's literally stepping in, and what I encourage people to do is like kind of take a deep breath and kind of like drop yourself, like your whole energy, like into the ground, and then intend to breathe up whatever is representing. So I'm representing John. I don't know who John is. I don't even know the person whose family that we're doing right now. I know absolutely no details about this, and that's perfect, because however you show up in that moment is going to be accurate to the blueprint that, say, like we're doing Rowan's constellation, of how John showed up, maybe not physically, but how John showed up energetically in the blueprint that she holds. And again, this may not necessarily be accurate to reality. This is her perception and her orientation to it. So you can see there's a lot of nuance and a lot of layers to kind of what is accurate. And it's not about accuracy, it's about authenticity. And so when you stand in to represent someone, you can't do it wrong. Like if you get in there and you're like, holy shit, I'm super nervous. And it's like, right, that's probably what it is you're representing. The person that you're representing probably doesn't have a lot of security in their system. They may not know themselves very well. They may be super dependent on things outside of themselves. So when you step into that role, you're like, whoa, this is really different. I'm not used to feeling no orientation to myself. And that's perfect. And so what I'm more interested in, rather than what Austin's experience of the representation is just reporting from that experience. I don't know who I am is a totally valid first, what's going on with John. I don't know who I am. Like I literally forgot the person's name. I don't remember the word John at this moment. That's relevant to the field as well. It's about place. And when we talk about place, we talk about not necessarily geography, but about belonging. And belonging is a big part of the constellation work. Belonging in your life, belonging in your family system, belonging in the lineage of your ancestry. And that's our goal, is to be able to find our place, not as a card-carrying member of our family system with all of the inheritances and obligations, but as an individual who has sovereignty to express their inheritance in a way that actually manifests their own destiny in their life. And so how do we reorient this inheritance to work for you rather than create a loyalty and an obligation to repeat the past, hoping to overcome what it is that's never been dealt with or reconciled before. So with representing, I want to hear what body sensations you're having. My hands are really hot, or I can't stand up. I literally just need to sit or lie down on the floor. And that's a totally valid response. Go with your movement, lay on the floor, express whatever the energy that's coming through is. And sometimes we play roles or we play things, and it's kind of heavy. There's a lot of burden on someone or something that you're representing. And I always encourage people to take care of yourself. You know, if you need a minute, you're like, wait, I just need to step out for a second. I need to like stretch. I need to move my body. I need to reorganize. Or I need to step out of this role completely because it's too much. It's too much physically, it's too much emotionally, or it's reminding me way too much of my own family system, and I'd be better off sitting in the chair and watching this movie than attempting to play a part that I already experience very deeply every day of my life. And so some roles are really easy and super fun and really light. Some roles can be burdensome. And so the way I do the work is I'm available to Austin while he's representing John. And if Austin has something going on, I'll come over and I'll put a time out and I'll talk with you real quick and give you the space to move what's moving for you enough to be able to step back in fully to your role and continue. So my teacher is a man named Stephen Victor. He's not doing the constellation work in the United States anymore, but I worked with him for 10 years. He had the ability to hold 5, 6, 7 constellations simultaneously. And what I mean by that is we're doing Rowan's constellation, but Megan is in a role and she's having her constellation played out through the family system. Charlie's sitting and watching and going, holy shit, this is my mom's story. And so that can be held on multiple levels. And sometimes just sitting in the room is enough. Everybody there is going to be participating, whether or not you're representing or you're just witnessing. And I invite people to stay in the room, but if there's a point where you're literally like, I need to step out, then that's fine too. Take care of yourself. Questions about anything I just shared? Does that all make sense?
Makes sense.
I would just like to comment something that you mentioned earlier about possibly stepping out of a role and then taking like a step back, sitting down, and becoming the observer again. I've had experiences where I did do that, and 10 minutes later, I felt like I was representing something again, and spoke up to it, and then I was back in the constellation, because just a different energy was there and attached in a way. And so it's also being aware of the field and really like centered in who you are and where you are, so you could be fully present in the room to recognize possibly something else that may be coming up that isn't yours, that may be relevant to the constellation.
Thank you for adding that. And there are times that someone in the room will be representing something and it won't be named. It won't get acknowledged. You won't be brought into the field necessarily, but you are absolutely validated in whatever your experience is and what you're having. And you brought up another point, which is sometimes you get taken out of a role where you're just like, no, this is not the right place for me. And you sit back down. And then 5 minutes later, you get picked for something else and you come in, you're like, yeah, this is what I'm here to do right now. And so there's just a level of trusting your gut and your instinct with this work where it's not linear. And there's times where we might be, 30 minutes into a constellation. I go, okay, everybody step out and sit down. We're going to do act 2. And so that can be part of the process where we get to a certain point and it stops moving. So it's not necessarily like we're gonna, rewrite Fiona's or Rowan's or Andrea's system for them. What we're going to do is we're going to collectively create a dream, a play, a theater for them to be able to witness. And it's really about their system integrating what it is they're seeing so that they have expanded options when they meet up with, similar stimulation in the future. Charlie, do you want to share?
Yeah, good to see everybody and get a sense of who we'll be spending the day with on Sunday. I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't ever done a constellation with a group of people like this, but I've done a fair amount of constellations in the last year using objects as representations, both with Isaiah and then I have a wonderful therapist who's based in Boulder, who's also really steeped in constellation work as one of her modalities. And when I was seeing her in person there last summer, we would be like rearranging all the patio furniture and bringing things out of the garden shed and using stuffed animals and you name it. And it was incredible process, sometimes just pieces of paper with words on them. So just the experience of seeing how representation works and how much we can trust our own inner sense of knowing and intuition around how something impacts us, even if our mind doesn't understand it. It's profound, and I'm really excited to get to experience it with people instead of patio furniture. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, and to think about the amount of impact that you had on your system playing with patio furniture, it's a testament to the nature of the work that there's a part of our minds that doesn't discern that something didn't take place. If we watch a movie and someone dies and we emote as if the person really died, there's a part of us that's just taking in the stimulation. So when we assign meaning to an object or an individual and we watch the exchange take place, there's a part of us that believes it actually happened. And so that's part of the magic of this work is you're kind of going past the logic and you're going straight into our empathic nature and our ability to feel and our ability to sense energy. And really what it's about is the interconnectedness of all life. And so when we're saying the field, what is the field, like capital F, I think about it as a unified field of consciousness. And that, we hear all things are connected and all these nice new ageisms. And it's something very different to actually touch that experience or to have that moment with other human beings where they make a movement and your body feels like it got hit with electricity. And it's like, how do you put that into words and how do you explain why that level of impact is possible? And the reality is that we're all one beingness having all these variable subjective experiences. And so my intent at the beginning of the day is to create a small ceremonial experience and create a container of safety for everybody. And then I turn the volume way up on our sensitivity so that we all become far more privy to that type of information. So along those lines, obviously, there's a level of confidentiality that we have on Sunday within the group. And I take it to another level other than we not only don't talk about what we witnessed or experienced in other people's systems, but we actually intend to forget. And it works. Intending to forget the things you become privy to, you'll end up keeping your own personal jewels of what's relevant for you and the representation. Like Andrea was it Rowan that was sharing about a previous role that they played, and it continues to inform you well into the future. It's very likely that she doesn't even remember the context of what was happening, whose constellation it was, all of the business that we have. It's not ours. We can leave in the field. And when we step out of that role, We just take what's relevant for us in our own systems. So at the beginning of the day, we'll make an agreement about intending to forget. We're going to do 3 constellations that day. We are going to start at 9:30 on time. And so if you're going to be late, please let me know beforehand. I might have you come in after we do the ceremonial process so as to not interrupt everybody's space. And we'll take breaks, but we're not going to have like a big meal break. So my experience with doing this work is you don't want a ton of food, and at the same time it's really nice to like graze and ground and put things in throughout the day. So I will bring snacks, things like chips, hummus, probably some veggies, some fruit, some chocolate is really nice to keep the system stimulated. If you want to bring more food to be able to kind of supplement basic stuff, I invite you to do that. And at the same time, I'd keep it light so that you're not inundating your body with a lot of need for digestion. Questions? Comments?
I'm curious if you, pull out pieces of the story from the focus client kind of throughout a constellation to, provide orientation throughout, or is that how constellations is done before? It's kind of what I experienced in the past.
I tend to not be very representative oriented. So I don't get my feedback and guidance from what the representatives are telling me. I'm getting more information from their body language. I'm getting more information from what they're not saying, how they're interacting with each other or not interacting with each other. And I'm watching the body language of the focus client. So yes, I might come over and check in with you. Is this accurate? Does this look familiar? Are we on the right track, especially at the beginning? But generally I'm watching your system and I can tell like, yep, this is hitting the spot. We're getting there. The less story any of us have, generally the more effective the work is, because we are not displaying what you told us, we're displaying what's relevant.
That's really
So
helpful.
yeah, and there might be times, and that's why I try to do the intake with everybody prior to getting there on Sundays, so we don't have to do a big interview process of you in front of everybody else. It can be hyper vulnerable, and what is coming up for you in the moment may not be what's really under it all that you're really wanting to move and to facilitate. So generally, no, I don't ask for story. I might say, where is this ancestor from? Or where did this lineage arise from? And I sometimes will represent a country or a place. So sometimes facts like that. But more often than not, if I don't have the information, I bring Logan in and I say, hey, stand here. And I won't name what it is because I don't need to know what it is. As long as your system is orienting to the movements that are happening, you'll assign your own meaning and your own relevance to what that representation is. And obviously, as the story plays out, it becomes obvious, or sometimes, Logan might say, I have an idea of what this is. Should I say it out loud? And sometimes I'll be like, no, because it's going to reorient everyone else to thinking they know what that means. So as much as we can do it without the mind, we do it without the mind. And if you're experiencing confusion as the focus client, then yeah, I might come over, have a little whisper conversation with you and clarify a couple of things. But the less they know about your system, the more effective they are as representatives.
Fascinating. Thank you.
And really phenomenal representatives, it doesn't matter if they know what it is or they don't know what it is. They'll stay in their role. And it comes pretty quickly for people as soon as they see it or they step in and all of a sudden they start getting like, I know how to do this now. It's pretty easy to shift from role to role. It's literally just kind of dropping your own sense of who you are in that moment and reporting not from self, but reporting from the representation. Thank you for asking that. Help me clarify a few things. Other questions, comments, concerns?
I'd just like to add, like at the end of each constellation, there has, in my experience, been people like wanting to give the person that the system that we're working with feedback of the experience. And correct me if I'm wrong, Isaiah, you don't really like to have the representatives give any feedback of their experience, because it may then impact your own personal interpretation of what you actually experience, from the objective point of view.
Yeah, so there's
Is
two
that
things
correct?
there's two things that'll happen at the end of the constellation. I'll ask everyone to step out of their role and literally and physically give back to the client their system. So bowing, giving them a hug, whatever that is, looking them in the eye, just giving it back to them and kind of clearing themselves of what's from someone else's system. And then when we sit in the chairs, there's an opportunity for individuals who are representing to share anything that they need to say to complete their representation. So something I didn't say, Rowan, as your dad was blah, 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 blah. That didn't get expressed, and I need to say that in order to let it go. That there's room for. What I won't entertain, and I'll interrupt someone if they start doing it, is, Rowan, when I was your dad, it just really seemed like interpretation of what was happening. And so we don't mess with someone else's dream. We let them have their own interpretation of it. And sometimes it's even, someone will look across the room and say, Megan, what were you representing? That was amazing. And Megan knows what she's representing. And I'd be like, it doesn't matter what Megan thinks she was representing. It matters what the representation was to Rowan as the focus client. And we can all have a completely different interpretation. And I did this once. I did a constellation for my brother when he was in a divorce process, and I kept everything blind. I didn't even know what the representations were because I was close to him and there was no way for me to not be biased. And so my partner at the time and my brother and I ended up having a conversation about it the next day. And all three of us had completely different interpretations of even who each person was. And I was like, okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Because I didn't even, and that's a rare situation. Normally, if we're going to do them blind, myself and the focus client will have an ABC and we know what they are. And everyone will step into their ABC roles and we'll do it blind. How much we do blind and how much we do named just kind of depends on the moment and kind of my read of the focus client and what their system is going to, what's going to work best for them in the moment. And I trust, kind of the intuition at times. And then there's sometimes I'll name it. I might say, Logan, I'm going to call you this. And he goes, no, that's not quite it. It's more like this. And sometimes naming a representation can reveal a lot more about the field. And other times it can limit kind of what's available. So stuff that's super private to your family system, we try to keep anonymous. We try to let it be yours and not make it everyone else's business. So that's the long answer to the question. Anyone else? Comments, questions, concerns? Well, I'm excited. We have 4 more people that are going to be there besides who's here right now. Raya, for those of you that know her, is one of them. Fiona, who, if any of you were at the constellation we did at Riverside for Raya, Fiona actually played Raya. And I knew she looked familiar and I couldn't remember from where. She did a phenomenal job representing. And so it'll be her constellation. and then Fiona's partner, David, and then there's one other woman, Callie, who will be with us that day. I have a couple of fence sitters for the last 2 remaining spots. Actually, Rowan, is Jane going to be there for yours?
As a guest. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to witness.
Okay. So she's just going to pop in for yours and then she'll head out afterwards,
Mhm.
most likely.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So that's the bulk of the group. There is one more spot that's not, unfortunately, I'm limited to 15 total because of COVID protocols at the yoga sanctuary. There is one more spot. If you have somebody in mind or someone pops up in between now and Sunday, send them my way and we can accommodate at least 1, maybe 2 more. Cool. I appreciate all of you taking time on Monday evening to be with us and to do some of the groundwork so that on Sunday, we can kind of drop in, pick up from where we left off, integrate the folks that weren't here tonight and kind of hit the ground running.
One quick logistic question. Oh, sorry to interrupt, Logan. It's quick. Isaiah, if somebody's running late or they can't find it or something, how do you want them to communicate with you? Do you want text or phone call or?
Yeah, I'll probably give you my phone and they can text me or instant message me and let me know prior. We will be there at 9, kind of getting things situated and set up. If you feel inclined to come move some chairs around or set up snacks, 9 o'clock is when the space is available to us. And certainly by like 9:15, we'll have things oriented, the space cleared, snacks out, chairs set up, and you're more than welcome to be there and take your spot. And I mean, I don't want to be super strict about time, and I want to be able to give these all of the room that they need and not feel like we're cutting any of them short or that we don't have, you know, a good 20-minute break or so here and there in between to be able to step outside and reset and hydrate and snack and take care of ourselves as well. Logan, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna thank Rowan and Andrea for their openness and vulnerability and for giving all of us the opportunity to be of support to your system. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice being with this group. It feels very youthful. I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun. And we're probably going to have the loveliest group photo at the end of this group ever because everybody here is just like amazingly bright, vibrant humans. So I'm really excited. I'm glad we got to do this. Some of you had only talked to on the phone so far. And it'll be a day. Yeah. The last one that I did of these in Boulder prior to quarantine time was a much smaller group, and it was probably the most profound day I've ever had of 20 years of doing constellation work. So there's definitely some magic of doing it in Boulder near the mountains on the land there, and the group that came together, just the bond that can happen between people who are stepping into each other's representations and getting to know each other kind of on a soul level rather than a personality level is pretty magical. And there's just a quality to the energy in the room by the end of the day of we've moved some stuff and we've gotten to see Logan step in and out of 8 different representations, and there's that commonality in every single one. That's Logan's essence. I see this brother right now because he doesn't change in every single role he plays. He does it, full on and with vulnerability. And same, I'm really excited for Megan and Charlie to kind of jump back in after all of this, one-on-one work and inanimate object work and playing in the field in every other way but doing the systemic work with people. It'll be really fun to watch you guys kind of run with it. All right. Anything else before we turn off the recording? Nope. Okay, so this recording, you can cut it.